Struggling to get that perfect brake feel? Let me show you 6 ways to bleed your Shimano brakes. Hey, it's Lan from Garage 31. Whether you're bombing gnarly descents or just cruising the flow trails, brakes are everything. I have 6 different methods, so hopefully you can find one that works for you. Make sure you stick around to the end. I've got one method that doesn't even require a bleed kit. Plus, don't miss out on my top tips to make bleeding a breeze. And the first method is a lever bleed. If you store your bike vertically, you've probably ran into this problem. You bring it down off the wall to go for a ride, and there's just no brake pressure left. We're going to install a cup on top of the brake, pump the lever, and remove the air. So level the brake, remove the bleed screw, and install the bleed cup, and fill with fluid. Pump away and you should see the air bubbles coming out. You know when you're done when there's no more bubbles coming out. Install the plunger, remove cup, install the bolt, and reposition your brake. Lever bleeds are great for removing air quickly so you can go out for that ride. Let's move on to method 2, which requires a little bit more work. Level your brake lever and install the cup. Make sure to fill the cup up all the way. For method 2, we're going to use a bleed syringe on the caliper to suck the new fluid down. This creates a slight vacuum on the brake, sucking the air out with it. If the syringe is full and the oil is still dirty, close the system at the caliper, remove the syringe, and dispose of it properly. Then repeat the process. Fill the bleed cup and suck the new fluid down. If you pull too hard on the syringe, you'll suck air from around the fitting rather than the brake, and it will seem like the brake is never getting bled as you're pulling too far. Just go slow and leave a 1 to 10 centimeter gap above the fluid in the syringe. That's the proper suction. You may need to pump the brake just like the lever bleed to finish the job. Method 3 is very similar to 2, but instead of sucking the fluid out from the top, we're going to fill the syringe first and push the fluid up. That will force any air bubbles to flow up with the new fluid into the lever. Repeat those steps as necessary until you have clean fluid and no air bubbles. Obviously, methods 2 and 3 are fairly similar. I personally like to combine both of them. I like to fill the bleed cup, suck the new fluid down, repeat that until there's new fluid coming out, then go back and forth, cycling the fluid up and down to really make sure that there's no more air. Methods 4, 5, and 6 don't use a bleed syringe, so if you don't have one, don't worry. We're going to achieve very similar results to methods 2 and 3, but it's going to take a little bit longer and it's not quite as efficient. Method 4, the gravity bleed. As the name suggests, we're going to use the force of gravity downwards to replace the fluid. We're going to fill the bleed cup here, open the caliper at the bottom, and let gravity suck the new fluid down, replacing the old fluid. Make sure you have a bucket or some container to catch the fluid coming out. Once the first cup has been drained, we're going to fill it back up before it gets too low. Repeat as necessary until the fluid is clean. Now that we've replaced the fluid, we're going to have to pump the brake to make sure there's no more air. Method 5, the Hope bleed. We're going to start with a full bleed cup, no syringe, and just the wrench. We're going to open the brake caliper bleed nipple, squeeze the brake lever, close the bleed nipple, and let go of the brake lever. Therefore, we're forcing fluid down through the system, but because we close the brake caliper before releasing the brake lever, we're not sucking air back in. course, repeat those steps as much as needed until the old brake fluid has been replaced and there's no air in the system. So that's 5 ways to bleed your Shimano brakes: a lever bleed, 2 with a syringe, 2 without a syringe. But what happens if you don't have a bleed cup either? Well, you can use one of these. So I've cleaned out this small bottle, cut the top off, and because the end is plastic here, we can put this in our brake and forcibly screw it in. The plastic will deform, making threads, creating a seal. Now we can fill it with mineral oil and repeat any of the bleed procedures I just showed you. The only tricky part about this is removing it when it still has fluid in it. So get your catch ball ready, and you're going to block any fluid coming out with your finger. So tip 1 is to keep the wet parts of your brake fluid, cups, tools in one spot, and then the dry parts in another. Always screw the lid back on the brake fluid in between uses so when you spill it, nothing comes out. Speaking of brake fluids, Shimano brakes use mineral oil. It does not matter what brand you use, they're all compatible. Yes, I know Shimano and Magura say to use only their own product. Of course they would. This Maxima stuff works good. It's dyed green. I actually go back between the green Maxima and the pink Shimano because it does give you a visual indication of if you've changed enough of your brake fluid. And my last tip, keep everything clean. Clean your brake caliper, clean your master cylinder before you start working. That way no dirt is going to contaminate the brake fluid. Likewise, once you're done, you want to rinse off all the old brake fluid that's still on the brake, because brake fluid and disc brake pads are not compatible. There you go, guys, 6 ways to bleed your Shimano brakes. I hope you learned something. Like the video to save it for later, and let me know in the comments what's your preferred method for bleeding Shimano brakes, and if you're willing to try any of these new techniques. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys on the trails.